Mil keeps calling our baby by a nickname we hate. She said, it's just a cute little name. So I started calling her by the wrong name repeatedly until she snapped. She finally stopped. When my husband Bram and I got married, I knew his family was a little unique. His mom, Laverne, was always a big personality. She's the type of person who has to be involved in everything. Not just involved, though, she has to control everything. Whether it's a family dinner, a holiday gathering, or what color shirt Bram should wear to a barbecue, Laverne has an opinion, and she makes sure you know it. At first, I didn't mind. She was overbearing, sure, but I chalked it up to her being protective of her family. Besides, I loved Bram, and Laverne was part of the package. I thought I could handle her. What I didn't realize was that having a child would turn her controlling nature into a full-blown power struggle. When we found out I was pregnant, Laverne was ecstatic. She started calling almost every day, asking about baby names, nursery themes, even which OBGYN I was seeing. She had opinions on everything. If I said I was craving pizza, she'd tell me to eat something healthier. If I mentioned we were thinking of buying a crib, she'd insist on sending us links to the perfect one. At first, I thought she was just excited to be a grandmother, so I let it slide. I tried to keep the peace and remind myself that her heart was in the right place. But it quickly became overwhelming. Bram and I couldn't make a single decision without her chiming in, and the more I tried to set boundaries, the more she ignored them. Then came the baby names. Bram and I had talked about baby names for years, even before we got married. When we found out we were having a girl, we settled on the name Marigold. It was unique, beautiful, and had sentimental meaning for me. My grandmother loved marigolds and always told me they symbolized strength and resilience. Naming our daughter Marigold felt like a way to honor her memory. When we told Laverne, she didn't even try to hide her disappointment. Marigold? Really? She said, wrinkling her nose like we'd suggested naming her after a car part. That's interesting. Are you sure you don't want to go with something more traditional? Like Mary, or Margaret? You know, something she won't have to explain her whole life? We're sure, I said firmly. We love the name Marigold. She didn't argue outright, but I could tell she wasn't thrilled. Every time we brought it up after that, she'd make little comments like, well, it's your decision, I guess, or I just hope she doesn't get teased at school. It was annoying, but I thought she'd eventually come around. I was wrong. The first time she called Marigold Goldie, it was like nails on a chalkboard. Bram and I had agreed from the start that we didn't want anyone shortening Marigold's name. It wasn't just a preference, it was a boundary. Marigold is her name, and we wanted people to respect that. But Laverne had other ideas. Oh, look at little Goldie, she said during one of her first visits after Marigold was born. I tried to laugh it off. We're not calling her Goldie, I said lightly. Oh, it's just a nickname, she replied with a wave of her hand. She's too cute for such a big name. I let it slide that time, thinking it was a one-off. But it wasn't. The next time she came over, it was the same thing. Goldie this and Goldie that. Laverne, I said firmly, we're not using nicknames. Her name is Marigold. Oh, come on, she said, laughing. It's just a cute little name. Don't be so sensitive. I felt my blood pressure spike. Sensitive? I wasn't being sensitive, I was asking her to respect the name we chose for our child. Bram backed me up, but Laverne just shrugged it off like we were being ridiculous. Over the next few months, it became a pattern. Every visit, every family gathering, she'd call Marigold Goldie. And every time, Bram and I would remind her not to. It didn't matter how many times we corrected her, she didn't stop. It's just a nickname, she'd say, over and over. You two are so uptight. She's not even old enough to care. But we cared. We cared a lot. I started dreading her visits. Every time she walked through the door, I braced myself for the inevitable Goldie comments. It wasn't just about the nickname anymore, it was about the blatant disregard for our wishes. She wasn't just calling Marigold by the wrong name, she was disrespecting us as parents. Bram tried to talk to her one-on-one, but it didn't help. She doesn't mean anything by it, he told me after one particularly frustrating conversation. She's just set in her ways. Then she needs to unset herself, I snapped. We've told her 100 times, and she's not listening. She's doing this on purpose. Bram didn't argue, but I could tell he didn't know what to do. He's always had a hard time standing up to his mom, and I didn't want to push him too hard. So, I decided to handle it myself. It all came to a head during a family barbecue at Laverne's house. She had invited a bunch of extended family members, and Bram and I had reluctantly agreed to go. I was already on edge, knowing she'd probably pull her usual Goldie nonsense, but I was determined to keep my cool. Everything was fine at first. Bram was grilling burgers, and I was sitting on the patio with Marigold in my lap. Then Laverne swooped in. "Oh, there's my little Goldie," she said, reaching out to take Marigold from me. I froze. It wasn't just the nickname, it was the way she said it, like she was daring me to say something in front of everyone. Like she was testing me. And that's when it hit me. If she wasn't going to respect our boundaries, then I wasn't going to respect hers. "Here you go, Lorraine," I said as I handed her Marigold, my voice dripping with fake sweetness. She blinked. "It's Laverne," she said, looking confused. "Oh, is it?" I said innocently. I must have forgotten. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't say anything. That was the moment I decided I was done playing nice. From that day on, I started calling her by the wrong name. Sometimes I called her Lorraine. Other times it was Lucille or Lynette. Once, I even called her Lavender, which I knew she hated. Every time she corrected me, I'd smile and say, "Oh, sorry, it's just a cute little name. You're being too sensitive." At first, she tried to laugh it off, but I could see the cracks forming. The more I did it, the more frustrated she got. And honestly, it felt amazing. From the moment I started calling her the wrong name, everything shifted. Laverne, for the first time in her life, didn't know how to respond. She'd shoot me confused or irritated looks whenever I called her Lorraine or Lucille, but she didn't confront me directly at first. She just muttered under her breath, and I could tell it was driving her nuts. The next time she visited, I turned it up a notch. "Hi, Lavender," I said brightly when I opened the door. "How are you?" "It's Laverne," she snapped, her smile faltering. "Oh, right. Sorry, it just slipped my mind," I said with the same fake sweetness she used whenever she said Goldie. Bram was trying so hard not to laugh. He'd glance at me, then at Laverne, biting his lip to keep it together. After she left that night, he finally let it out. "You're brutal," he said, chuckling. "She asked for it," I replied. And I was right. Laverne had pushed and pushed, completely ignoring our boundaries, and I was done being polite about it. If she wasn't going to respect us, then she was going to get a taste of her own medicine. But Laverne wasn't the type to back down easily. At the next family gathering, she cornered me in the kitchen while everyone else was in the living room. "Why do you keep calling me the wrong name?" she demanded, her voice low but sharp. I pretended to think about it. "Oh, you mean like how you keep calling Marigold the wrong name?" Her face turned red. "That's not the same thing. Goldie is just a nickname. And Lorraine is just a nickname," I said with a shrug. "It's cute, don't you think?" She glared at me, her jaw tightening. "You're being childish." "No, Laverne, I'm being clear. We've asked you over and over to stop calling her Goldie, and you ignored us. So, if you can't respect our wishes, why should I respect yours?" She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Finally, she huffed and stormed out of the kitchen. That night, Bram and I had a long talk. He admitted he hated how his mom acted but said he didn't know how to handle it without causing a full-blown family fight. I told him I understood, but I also made it clear that I wasn't going to let her walk all over us. "I'll talk to her again," he promised. But I wasn't holding my breath. The turning point came a few weeks later. Laverne had invited us over for dinner, and as usual, she swooped in to grab Marigold the moment we walked through the door. "There's my little Goldie," she said, her voice dripping with that fake cheeriness she used when she knew she was being annoying. Without missing a beat, I turned to Bram's dad and said, "Can you pass me the salt, Larry? His name is Richard." The whole table went silent. Laverne froze, staring at me with wide eyes, and Richard, or Larry, I guess, looked completely confused. "It's Richard," he said, glancing between me and Laverne. "Oh, right, sorry," I said, smirking. "I guess I just got mixed up." Bram nearly choked on his water. Laverne, on the other hand, looked like she was about to explode. "Why do you keep doing this?" she finally snapped, slamming her fork down. "Why can't you just call people by their proper names?" I raised an eyebrow. "Why can't you?" Her face turned a deep shade of red, and for a moment, I thought she was going to lose it right there at the dinner table. Instead, she took a deep breath, plastered on a fake smile, and said, "Fine. You win." I didn't say anything, but inside, I was cheering. From that day on, Laverne never called Marigold Goldie again. She still came over to visit, still acted like the doting grandmother, but she finally started respecting our boundaries. And the best part? She never brought up my little nickname game again. Bram and I joke about it sometimes, but I think he's secretly relieved. He told me later that he was proud of me for standing my ground, even if it was a little unconventional. As for Laverne, I think she learned her lesson. She still tries to control things now and then, it's just who she is, but when it comes to Marigold, she finally knows where the line is. And I made sure she knows not to cross it.